Goeiedag. My name is Mudinda Mbebana. Welcome to the Chosen Generation. According to the stats, in South Africa, 1 in 5 of the couples who marry file for divorce. And they do this between the 5th and the 9th year of their marriage, which is often the time when the little children have come into the family. When we saw this, we decided that we need to take a closer look at this subject. Joining us today, we have a few distinguished guests who are going to help us unpack this issue. The first person I must introduce is the author of a great book entitled Inner Strength. Her name is Slindile Chabalala. We also have in our midst Kosazana Maseko, and we have also Khabo Sikhala, who is a social worker from FAMSA. Lastly, I will introduce Tato Mashishi, who is a lawyer. Now it's time for us to get into the conversation, but before we do that, let me remind you to always share your views with us on the hashtag TCG on SID. Let's get the conversation going.
That's a hard one to answer because I don't think people divorce because they want to divorce. It's not because they hate each other all of a sudden. I think really what happens is people say they don't know the other person anymore, but what it really is that they found out who the person really is. So all those red flags that they ignored while dating now come up in marriage, and it's like, oh my goodness. So they don't want to break up. They don't want the marriage to end.
Okay, I believe sometimes people get married not wanting, or they get married at a tender age, and they believe that's the way to go. Like, for example, our parents back in the days, they got married probably at 20. They didn't get time to date. They didn't get time to meet other people who are not the people they were set up with.
Yeah, in today's world, I think there's too much divorce. Reason being, people get married for wrong reasons and divorce for the right ones. And peer pressure, family, and peer pressure, doing for people. We are doing for people. Nowadays, we just do things because of family, because of church peer pressure, and society. We like to impress. We live in a fake life.
So it definitely affects the people that are divorcing, but without a shadow of a doubt, I can definitely say that the kids are affected adversely because we know that the initial construct that God had for family or nucleus family was a mom and a dad and kids. So when that breaks up, there's just a whole lot of complexities that are introduced and the kids suffer a lot.
I don't think they really focus on that because at first they need to identify, okay, what we're doing is going to hurt the kids in the long run, but they feel like, no, I'm hurting, you're not treating me well, so I need to leave. But they're not focusing on the kids who are getting damaged along the way.
All right, let's get into the conversation. I'd like to welcome all my guests to the show. And really, I thank you for being here. Let's try and get into this issue as soon as possible. I think to start off, I'll start with you, Slindile. Maybe if you can tell us your story, how long you've been married, how the marriage was, perhaps. Do you think you're ready for the marriage? Yeah, maybe if you can give us a few salient details about your experience.
Yeah, so I was married for 6 years before the whole ordeal. And before marriage, we've been together, we've known each other for like a year.
Okay.
I could say that probably we got engaged very early, but I think also from my side, it's because of the upbringing and the grooming that I've had to say, avoid being too long in a relationship with somebody, especially when you're starting to grow very close with each other. We couldn't stay away from each other. Like we were always together. And I think just to avoid making mistakes before we got married. And that's why we just decided that it was best that we got married. For my side, I was ready because I understood him. I was happy. He was a good man. My marriage was good as well, even after that. I can't falter him. I can't say anything bad about him. He was a great husband. I think from a partner, supportive. I mean, even before we got married, there's a lot of stuff I went through. And he was just there for me. And that made it, a point to say, this is the kind of man I wanted in my life. The support that he was giving me. I could be safe and I could be happy with the husband that's supportive. And I think that's what made me feel ready and willing and able to marry him at that time.
No, that's interesting. Maybe Makosazana, I can bring you in. Maybe similar questions. How was your experience? Were you also happy in your marriage? How long was it? Were you ready? And also how you met. I think that would be nice to hear.
Okay, we met through a friend, a mutual friend. So I've been married for 6 years, and then we dated for over a year. I think my marriage ended in the first year. Although, like people would keep on saying, no, the first 2 years is tough. The third year will get better. But it was getting more worse. Like each and every year it was worse. It was another challenge after another one. Until on the fifth, when the 6th year started, that's when I knew that this is my final year. It's either this thing is working or it does. Yeah. So I even told him that if this year is not working, let's just call it quits, because it doesn't help.
Maybe, Slee, I should bring you in. You've all painted up a picture of how things started. But maybe getting closer to the end, maybe you can tell us if you saw any red flags. Did you perhaps suspect that something could break the relationship?
Yeah, I was smitten in love, guys. He was always with me. I'm a busy person at church, in my lifestyle. I'm always doing so many things, and wherever I went, he was there. If I'm busy either presenting a Pathfinder program or whatever, he was taking care of the kids, changing the nappies, taking care of me. Honey, you haven't eaten, So I was totally blindsided by what happened. And how it happened for me, even till today, it just looks like it was a story of 3 months that just unwrapped the whole 3 years. In 3 months, I realized that I was living a lie for the last 6 years. Sure. That's what 3 months did, and that's where it came from, to say it was just a mess. But during that time, I was happy. I never expected it at all.
Wow. What about you? Did you see any red flags?
Okay, it was different things. Okay, the first year, one thing which was common, it was being responsible. My ex-husband was not responsible at all. Like financially, emotionally, and there were red flags. There were abusive tendencies, like when we fight, the person will buy gifts, of which at that time I never knew it was red flags. Until along the way, I realized that, when you fight, a person would buy you a gift. Yeah, it's a red flag of abuse, until I experienced the serious emotional abuse. Because, keeping it so long, it ended up to that.
Okay.
Yeah, to that emotional abuse, because now it's no longer a simple fighting. Yeah, it became so terrible. And then the next thing is bitterness and all that. So
maybe moving the process forward, not to make light of the things that you're saying, maybe this is the best time to bring in a lawyer. What is the process? What happens when you reach the stage and divorce has to happen? Maybe you can talk us through that.
Thank you for that. I think maybe by way of context, essentially when couples decide that they want to get a divorce, they would be relying on one of the grounds which obviously you would need to rely for before you could institute divorce. And that would be one, they would get to a point where they would realize that, this relationship of theirs has reached a point of irretrievable breakdown. That simply means that, there are no prospects of them having to restore that relationship to what it was in its former glory.
Okay.
And that would take into account a couple of things that, would speak to that. It could be that, as is also, it happens a lot, there could be an instance where the couple didn't stay together as husband and wife, and this could be for a period of over a year. In other instances, there could either be an adultery that has been committed in the relationship, which the defendant is not, which would be committed by the defendant, and the plaintiff, that's the one that's instituting the divorce, is not able to reconcile with the fact that, my partner cheated on me. So there are a couple of things to take into account, and the other one would be
basically conditions before you can even engage. Some conditions must be fulfilled legally.
So for example, another one would be in a instance where your spouse is into a state where they're suffering from mental illness for a prolonged period of time, or they could be permanent or and also prolonged unconsciousness. So those are a few grounds that you could rely on, and obviously to institute the process, you would start the process by what we call summons. So basically that's a document that will need to be served on the defendant. So you need to understand that when you speak about the plaintiff, that's...
Just as you are coming up with so many things, and I really want to go slowly through them. So I will come back to that. But I just want to bring in Khabo. Maybe if you can speak, we must not forget that it's not just the husband and wife.
Yes.
Oftentimes there are children involved.
We tend to forget about
yes,
them.
yes. What happens? What's the impact of the divorce on the children?
Yeah, divorce is a very difficult situation for the entire family.
Yes.
But for the kids, it can be a difficult situation, a scary one, because they feel angry,
Okay.
they are frustrated, they are confused, they're even worried about the future. And some, they can even feel guilty, blaming themselves, or maybe that's the other reason why their parents are divorcing.
Okay.
And they find it difficult to adjust to the situation, especially the change. Changing of homes, changing of skills, leaving their friends and starting afresh, new friends where they are going. So for them, it's very difficult.
So it's really a disruption of their life. And I'm so sorry that, sorry for the pun, we have to disrupt this conversation and go to a break. And to our viewers at home, we'd like to ask you to please share your comments with us. Maybe you can share your story. The hashtag is TCG on SID. Let us know what you think about this conversation. We'll see you after the break. Stay tuned. Welcome back to The Chosen Generation. We've been discussing the topic divorce. And before the break, we looked at a few legal issues and we took the stories of some of our guests. We'd like you to share your ideas and your views on this subject. The hashtag that we can use is TCG on SID. Let us know what you think about this issue. Right. Perhaps back to my guests. Before I come to you, Tato, let me start with Slee. Slee, did you struggle with the divorce process, the papers that needed to be filed and so forth? How was that process for you?
So for me, it wasn't really difficult because for one, I am a law student myself.
Oh, okay.
So I kind of had a bit of a background what I needed to do. It was just going to the place and so on. The only thing, it was just the emotional strain that it takes on you to go through that process. That is what I experienced, and that was difficult for me. There was a lot of procrastinating, whether should I submit the papers, is it the right time? So still had a lot of questioning. But at least I knew where I needed to go and what I needed to do. So that for me was not a difficult process at all. It was just the response from him that was a bit of a challenge.
So you were really clear on the process already. Maybe Tato, I cut you off previously. Maybe if you can give us some insight on the process. What do couples do? How do you get those legal papers filed and your court date and so forth?
Yeah. Unfortunately, not a lot of people are quite, in the know with regards to how to go about with the process. As it has already been said, it's quite a stressful process. So essentially what you're looking at, and Khabo also touched on an important thing that, when we consider the issue of divorce, we also need to take into account that they're children. So also in your divorce papers, if they're children, from the substance of the marriage, you'd obviously want to cater for that, divorce papers. And what the court will consider in that is that arrangement, if you do decide to have an arrangement in place, needs to be in the best interests of the children. So essentially you would approach a lawyer. That's what we would advise people, depending on, the estate and what we're dealing with and the marital regime. So in most instances, it would be advisable to approach a lawyer. Essentially, you would approach a lawyer to institute summons, and then those summons would then be served on the other party, which you're trying to divorce, and then you follow the process. So if it's a contested divorce, it could take longer. We're looking at 2 to 3 or even more years for it to be resolved. But if it's an uncontested divorce, that usually, is resolved quick. You're looking at 4 weeks if everything is done properly. So that it would be advisable, depending on the estate and the circumstances at play, to approach a competent lawyer who would be able to provide the advice.
So when couples do approach you as a legal professional, what is the most common question that you get in your practice?
Yeah, I think the first thing you'd want to establish is the marital regime. Is you know the couple, is it a couple married in community of property, out of community of property? If it's out of community of property, does it include accrual? If not, so you could understand, get a gauge as to what would be the best route to follow. And then from there, I mean, obviously you want to find out from the parties or whoever would be instructing you if they have full appreciation of what they're trying to do and they understand that once you go the divorce route, then that's you initiating the process to get the marriage dissolved. And if they appreciate that, so essentially you'd want to make sure that you do have one of the grounds that are available that you could rely on to institute the process. But yeah, essentially that's what you would in most instances want to get from clients.
So maybe Nkositato mentioned court papers or the marriage contract, and I'm interested to know which one you chose. Were you married in community or out of community or any of the other contracts?
It was in community of property.
Okay, what was the reason for that?
At the spiritual background, being married by a pastor, and the other thing, most of the time, when we get married, we don't think we're gonna go through divorce. We tell ourselves that we're not getting married for divorce. And when we're young, we have a mind of saying we wanna grow together. We're building together and all that. So the togetherness is always there, and that's how we end up with the in-community of property.
Did you know what the implications of the community?
Not much.
I was about to jump in there to say no one actually thinks about it to say what it has. I think we grew up in a society and our Christian background doesn't allow us to really dwell on that much. So for us, it's just I'm getting married to a man I love, that I trust, my family is happy with him and his family accepts me. I don't really think we dwell on the in or the out.
And I think that another thing also to add to that, you can't even question it. It's a default position that you're not even at liberty to question.
And if no one asks, it is.
Maybe I should bring you in then, Tato. What are the implications of in the community of property? What does that actually mean?
So essentially, when a couple decides to get married and they want to do it in community of property, what that simply means is they bring their separate estate into one joint estate. So by estate, we're referring to both your assets and liabilities. If, for example, one of the spouses was a student studying through NSFAS, that would be a student loan that would be taken into account, that would be forming part of the joint estate. So even if the other one, didn't have any loan of that sort, so that become part of the joint estate. And when it's out of community of property, essentially what we will have is separate estates, and that will also be factored on. Does it include accrual? So basically, accrual is a calculation to say that if the marriage is out of community of property with accrual, what the couple would generate during the course of their marriage, that will be included, so that if they do divorce, then there's a spouse with a lesser estate that will try to. It's more of a balancing act to see that, try to get them to a state of equilibrium, if you could just use the word.
Okay. So earlier on, you were talking about contested and uncontested divorce and the implications in the length of the process. And I think, what if I am the one who's being divorced, so to say, as a layperson, and I cannot afford to contest the divorce? Are there any steps that I can take?
Well, fortunately, we do have a lot of organizations that are willing to assist people, obviously subject to you meeting the requirements that will be applicable. We have organizations such as, obviously, Legal Aid, which provides free legal services to qualifying persons. And there are other organizations, such as probono.org, and private firms that obviously would provide the pro bono legal services. So it's just a matter of finding out, reaching out to those organizations and seeing if you do meet what's called the means criteria to see that you qualify for their services. But once you do qualify, they'll be able to assist you.
Okay, that's very interesting. I think there's more to cover. And to our viewers at home, please continue to share your views with us on TCG on SID. Let us know what you think and what your story was. We'll be right back after the break. Welcome back to The Chosen Generation. We are still discussing the subject divorce, and we encourage you to continue sharing your ideas with us on the hashtag TCG on SID. Let us know what you think. Maybe you can even share your story with us. Coming back to my beautiful guests, let me start with you, Slee. Maybe I should ask this question. Did your children get any counseling after the divorce?
No, my kids never went for counseling. But later on, I think my son showed signs that he needed it. Because for him, it was, I think, different because he never got to experience the life when we were married. And hearing about it from people, bits and pieces, kind of impacted him. Hence why later on it started to, even now, currently as we speak, you can still see the effects that it has had on him. And we've arranged for necessary counseling. Fortunately, the company has got those means and stuff, and they talk, and you can hear, even with the feedback you get, it all comes from that relationship that he wants with the father and how it impacts him. And even when he speaks to me, he still has a lot of questions, and I'm still sensitive about sharing a lot with him because I still feel he's still young.
Okay. That's interesting. I think it's good that we started on this line of questioning because I want to bring you in, Sis Khawa, as a social worker. Why do you think it's important for children to go for counseling after such a traumatic event such as divorce?
Okay, during the process of divorce, children go through ongoing emotional and behavioral difficulties.
Okay.
Whereby they are being psychologically affected. Therefore, it is important for them to get emotional support from social workers and psychologists as well.
Okay.
Because during the counseling, that's when they will create a safe space for them or a conducive environment for them to feel free, to share their feelings. And also they will help them to deal with the pain that they are feeling.
So even on that, sometimes, I don't know how you do it. Are both partners present at the counseling sessions? So for example, you find that one partner does not even want to contribute. Let's say you've got issues of there's no support, whether it's financial or spiritual or even emotional. How do you address those issues that are happening between the two that are affecting the child?
We do focus on the family as a whole.
Okay.
Then later on, focus on the individual.
Okay. Okay. So there's a planned program for all the members in the
Yes.
Okay. That's very interesting. In your experience and in the counseling sessions that you have done with many of these couples, what do you find to be some of the reasons why divorces are happening in practice? What are people saying about the situation?
Lack of communication.
Okay.
And then where there is no respect.
Okay.
And then where there is no honesty.
Okay.
And where they don't work as a team. Like,
Alright.
remember, in a relationship, you should work as a team. Make sure that you respect each other and the communication should open.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. That's interesting. Bring you in, Makhosazana. What do you think? What are some strategies that we can use to prevent divorce in our families out there?
As it has been mentioned, I think the main issue is communication.
Okay.
Sometimes it's not lack of communication. Communication is there, but the manner in which we communicate is the incorrect one. And sometimes is presented as disrespect. Actually, sometimes it's not disrespect, it's the timing.
Okay.
Because we find ourselves communicating only when we're angry.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like, and then everyone is shouting. And at that moment, you find that you want to hit where,
painful.
where it's
Strike
gonna
the point home.
Yeah,
Yeah. Finish him.
exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, sorry. Did I say it loud? All right. Yeah.
so the timing is the worst part. So one thing I've realized, after divorce is that, when you're doing when you're sitting down and re-looking at your marriage, I realized that, the timing was bad of communication. We were communicating. I was like I always said, how do I feel? What do I think about and all that? But the timing was bad, and the manner that I was saying it was bad. When we're both shouting, no one hears what you say. And then now it comes to the other party as disrespect.
Okay.
And to me, it comes as if you don't listen to me. And when you can check most marriages, it's all about, you don't listen, you disrespecting me. A man will say, well, you disrespect. A woman will say, you don't listen. But it's because we don't communicate proper.
All right. Wow.
Communication is the key.
How can people get your book?
Okay. So the book Inner Strength is available basically on my hashtag line, which is at Sleazonis on Instagram or at Queen Lady P. That's where you can find it. Or you can follow me as well, Precious Slee, which is CLC-LI Chabalala.
Okay.
And also with my numbers where somebody can then WhatsApp my business line in order to order from there. And it's just 220 a copy.
All right, great. Again, I will keep on thanking you. I really appreciate that you're willing to come and help us, talk about this subject. Maybe to our viewers at home, we really thank you so much for allowing us into your space. We hope that indeed you will join us again next week as we cover another issue. And maybe a final word. It was always God's design. He wanted marriages to be beautiful and all those things that we hope for. And it is no, mistake that his first miracle was actually at a wedding. And I think what we need to realize about this is that we need to invite Jesus not only into our weddings, but also into our marriages, because he is the one who saves, who sanctifies, and satisfies. So you can continue this discussion with us on our hashtag TCG on SID. Let us know what you think and share your story with us. Maybe others will be able to learn. And also don't forget to subscribe to our channel, the SID Media on YouTube. Let us meet again next time. It's been great. We love you and see you again in the next show.